In code, little breadcrumbs phrases like asterisk curiosity has a price asterisk and asterisk entropy remembers, asterisk by September. I knew what he was doing with the stolen crypto. He wasn't just hoarding it. He was staking it, flipping it through shady exchanges, and bragging online under an alias, asterisk asterisk 0x shade, asterisk asterisk I read every post, every boast. Cracked my old man's vault. He wrote once, guess the past doesn't scale. That night, I poured another glass of scotch, typed a single command, and the trap closed. Every ID moved past through my contract. I'd seeded years before one designed to activate under a precise set of cryptographic conditions. When it triggered, his entire wallet network rerouted back through my nodes, bleeding into cold storage under my control. His empire vanished in 13 seconds. Anourlaté, mi fonran. Why did you was shaking? Not angry, afraid. I said nothing at first. Let him sit in that silence. Then, I didn't take it. Ethan, I asterisk retrieved asterisk it. You, his breath hitched. You drained me. That was asterisk mine. Asterisk no. I said softly. It was never yours. You can't steal from a ghost that built the locks. There. Was a long pause. Then a quiet sob. That was when I realized the truth. The boy hadn't wanted money. He'd wanted recognition, validation, the same thing I'd once sought when I broke my first cipher in a basement full of humming terminals. But the world doesn't reward brilliance without boundaries. And neither would I meet me tomorrow. I said finally. We'll talk. He didn't answer, but I heard him breathing, slow, ragged, then a click. That night I didn't sleep. I kept replaying his words. That raw, wounded confusion. I wondered if I'd gone too far, if I'd become the monster I once fought to outthink. But when dawn came, I opened my encrypted logs and saw something that froze my blood. A new connection, unauthorized, originating from asterisk my own subnet, asterisk he was coming back. He didn't knock this time. I heard the door creak open, the hesitant shuffle of sneakers on the hardwood, and the faint scent of cold air following him in. I didn't turn around. My monitor cast a pale light across the room, its glow tracing lines over the stacks of papers. The scattered USB drives, the framed certificate from the NSC's Cryptographic Research Division, my ghosts, staring back. Ad butto fils Clodor, I said quietly. He obeyed. The click echoed through the silence like a gunshot. For a long moment, there was only the hum of the old workstation between. US, then he spoke. You planned this. From the beginning, I swiveled the chair to face him. He looked smaller, then I remembered his hoodie wrinkled, his face pale, from sleepless nights. His eyes darted from screen to screen, scanning the terminal, windows that pulsed like quiet heartbeats. I gave you room to play, I said. You just didn't realize the sandbox had walls. He clenched his fists. You asterisk tricked asterisk me. You made me think I was winning. I had to know how far you'd go. He laughed a dry, brittle sound. You sound like some kind of movie villain. It was all a test. You ruined me for a test. No, I said softly. I saved you from a life you couldn't handle. He shook his head. You don't get it. You don't understand what it's like to be. Asterisk me asterisk. Everything's encrypted. Everything's owned. Everything's locked behind systems built by people like you people who think they can own information. I was just taking back what should have been free. Information, I said, is only free until someone bleeds for it. His mouth twisted. You really believe that? I've watched people die for less than a leaked hash. He didn't respond. His gaze drifted to the far wall, where an old chalkboard stood covered in formulas. Entropy curves, RSA primes. A lattice of half-erased notes that once helped secure entire nations. He used to sit beside me as a child, drawing with colored chalk next to my equations dragons, spaceships, his world beside mine. Now, he was staring at the symbols, like they were accusations. I stood, walking slowly to the safe in the corner. Each one alog no distisceno, beware non honest. Premier spanito penry interrupted obsbituisu. Asterisk M asterisk U. I've done the same things broke into systems that shouldn't exist. Decrypted secrets no human was meant to read. But I learned what happens when knowledge outruns morality. He frowned. What's that supposed to be? Your inheritance, I said. And your sentence. He hesitated before opening it. Inside was a printed document, pages of code and notes, handwritten comments, and a letter folded on top. Epiketi a few lines. Asterisk, this algorithm is a paradox. It can It's greater than execution, consumes its own proof of origin. It is greater than my greatest achievement and my greatest regret. Asterisk, he looked greater than up sharply. Is this real? Yes, I wrote it greater than 22 years ago. I called it Cerberus. It was greater than designed to decrypt classified data under extreme conditions, total communication. Blackouts, state collapse scenarios. But it worked too well, greater than the people funding it wanted to weaponize it. So greater than I buried it, physically, burned the rest, and you're greater than just giving it to me. I nodded. Because I greater than know, you'll try to use it. And when you greater than do, you'll understand why I stopped. He stared at greater than me, then at the folder again. His voice dropped to a whisper. This could break everything. Governments, banks, Bitcoin, greater than the whole cryptographic web. Yes, I said. That's the greater than point. He pushed the papers away, like they were greater than radioactive. You're insane. Am I? Or do you finally greater than see what power looks like without conscience? He didn't greater than answer. His face was pale, but his eyes burned. With something fear. Or maybe both. He stood abruptly, pacing greater than the room, running his fingers through his hair. So greater than what now? You drain my wallets, hand me a greater than doomsday cipher, and expect me to what repent. I expect you greater than to decide, I said. Whether you want to be greater than a thief or a builder. He stopped by the greater than window. The rain outside had started again, thin streaks, tracing paths down the glass. You always that sample. Like there's good and bad, and greater than you can just encrypt one and delete the other. I smiled faintly. That's what's a raft and by any twexity at your net buck, and something his. You think I can't see what this really is. You're scared. You see me, as you once were reckless. Brilliant, dangerous, and you want to cage me before I surpass you. I didn't deny it. Because part of me knew he was right. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You think I didn't know you'd trace me, that I didn't anticipate the honey tokens. I wanted you to see me. I wanted you to react. I froze. You what? His lips curved into a slow, dark grin. You always said the best cipher is one that hides itself in plain sight, so I used that lesson. I left the trail because I knew you'd follow it. The room seemed to tilt. For what purpose? To lead you here, he said, reaching into his backpack and pulling out a small, matte black device leak, unmarked, humming faintly. To asterisk this. Asterisk, I felt my pulse quicken. What is that? He placed it gently on the desk beside the folder. You'll see. Before I could stop him, he tapped a small button on its side. As a screen around the room flickered once, twice, then stabilized, but the displays had changed. Every monitor now showed the same thing. My encrypted drives, my private keys, my entire digital life mirrored back at me. He looked me dead in the eye. You're not the only one who can build traps. I moved to the terminal. Hands flying across the keyboard, but he was faster. The device interfaced directly with my network through a backdoor I hadn't noticed. The arrogance of age I assumed the fortress was still mine. He whispered, you trained me too well. Grandpa, I looked at the code scrolling across the screen, recursive loops. Modular, extractions, fragments of my own algorithms repurposed against me. He wasn't destroying the data. He was copying it. Every secret I'd ever locked away, being siphoned into his machine. Stop this, I said, rising to my feet. You have no idea what you're... He cut me off. No, you don't. You think the world still works the way it did when you wrote your precious ciphers. But people don't want privacy anymore, they want power. And whoever controls the information controls everything. Ethan, he pressed another button. And the screens went black. The silence that followed was suffocating. I could hear my own heartbeat, a low, steady drum in my ears. Then, from the darkness, his voice soft, trembling, almost sad. You should have taught me how to stop. Not just how to break, and before I could answer, he was gone. I stood alone in the dim room, surrounded by dead screens, the faint smell of ozone still hanging in the air. My own reflection stared back at me in the black glass, an old man who'd taught the world how to keep secrets and one boy how to destroy them. But somewhere beneath the fear, beneath the guilt, a darker thought began to stir. If he had learned from me, then perhaps I could still predict his next move. And maybe I could still win this war of blood and algorithms. I spent the next 48 hours inside my own digital autopsy. The air in my study was heavy with burnt dust from overheated hardware, the window sealed, shut against the dawn light. Every log, every kernel trace, every residual packet was dissected like a crime, seen because that's what it was. Eh? Perfect theft, and the fingerprints were mine. He hadn't just copied my data. He'd rewritten the record of Asterisk, how Asterisk it was taken. The attack was surgical. My timestamps matched my own past access pattern synthetic ghost sessions that made it look like Asterisk. Asterisk had willingly decrypted everything. I'd seen adversaries do this to foreign intelligence networks, but never imagined I'd see the technique turned on me. Nobi family. But the device he left, that sleek black parasite, was the key. Première disassemblée. It, layer by layer. Under the shell was no ordinary drive or transceiver. It was a hybrid system, FPGA cores, a cryptographic accelerator, and an adaptive firmware stack running my own modified ECC routines. My signature, my code. The bastard hadn't just stolen from me, he'd used Asterisk, my own architecture Asterisk, to build the weapon. Bravo, I muttered under my breath, setting the tweezers down. You la première ligne back, exhaustion mind. Somewhere, in those layers of code, was the handshake protocol that linked the device to his network. I needed that key. Without it, I couldn't trace the outbound data. With it, I might just find where he was hiding. I pulled up the last captured packets from the moment before the blackout. They ran anomalous. Signature embedded in the TCP stream. Unfamiliar, yet rhythmic, not random noise, not encrypted text. It was too elegant. I recognized the pattern instantly. Morse, asterisk, 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 asterisk repeating. He'd left me a message. I converted it by hand. The translation appeared on screen. Greater than find me, where you buried your sins. For a moment I just stared at it, the words hammering through my chest like a pulse. There was only one place that could mean. Back then, 22 years ago, I had built Cerberus in a secure lab outside of Zurich, under a shell corporation. When the project was shelved, I destroyed every official trace and smuggled the drives into the Alps, where I buried the primary hardware in a lead-lined vault beneath an abandoned weather station. A private tomb for dangerous code. And no, he was calling me back there. I felt the years press down on me like a physical weight. I thought I could teach him restraint through fear. But I'd only taught him obsession through challenge. And now, he wanted me to see how far the pupil could push the master. That night, I boarded a flight to Geneva. The flight attendant smiled politely, unaware that in the overhead been sat a satchel containing a custom-built Faraday enclosure, 3 air-gap drive, and a pistol I hadn't touched since days with the directorate. As the plane crossed over the Atlantic, I stared into the endless dark and thought about him, about the boy who used to sit beside me with a soldering iron, building circuits out of scrap. He'd laugh when the letters flickered to life, that pure sound of discovery. It had been years since I'd heard it without a trace of defiance. Je wen première lande through my coat. Like statique. I rented a small jeep, drove east through narrow alpine roads, and reached the weather station by dusk. The sky was bruised purple, clouds dragging over the peaks like smoke. The station was exactly as I'd left it, rusted metal siding, shattered windows, a single antenna still standing like a bent finger pointing toward the void. Inside, the concrete floor was covered in frost. My footsteps echoed. I found the vault door behind the old generator room. The keypad was corroded, but the mechanical backup still worked. 6 rotations to the right, to left, 1 final tick-click. The air that escaped smelled of cold metal and ghosts. Inside lay the remains of Cerberus, a server stack covered in dust, cables stiff with age, and a terminal screen still faintly alive, drawing power from an ancient generator. Impossible, I thought. I hadn't left it on. That's when I saw the message blinking on the terminal. Greater than hello. Grandpa, my hand went to my sidearm, instinctively. The air was utterly still, yet I could feel him. That same electric tension I'd known in every duel of ours, silent, cerebral, intimate. Et then, première calée d'out. A speaker crackled to life, and his voice filled the room distorted, but unmistakable. You finally made it. I wasn't sure you'd come. I scanned the corners of the vault. Where are you? Everywhere in here, he said. But not close enough for you to pull that trigger. I lowered the gun, more for myself than for him. You've gone too far. Ethan, you don't know what Cerberus can do. I know exactly what it can do. You built a god killer, and then buried it. Why? Because you were scared of the consequences of your own genius, because it shouldn't exist. I snapped. There are systems built on those keys. Economies. Lives. He chuckled. You still think the system deserves protecting. You haven't looked around lately. Old man. Everything's already broken. Decentralization was supposed to free people, but now it's just another hierarchy. Built on greed, ingenious throttle down. SS oft lead Lee. To let entropy win for once, I took a slow step forward. You've copied my research, my keys, even my identity. But you're still missing something crucial. Oh? Understanding the math doesn't mean you understand the meaning. He was silent for a moment. Then, that's where you're wrong. The floor beneath me hummed. Machines I thought were dead began to stir, lights blinking to life one by one. My monitors displayed lines of Cerberus code recompiled, executed. Ethan, I said, heart pounding. You activate that sequence, and it won't stop. Every encryption protocol built on classical curves. Wheel de grade. Global keychains, security networks, military comes all will collapse. I know, he whispered. Why? Why are you doing this? Because you made me believe truth was sacred, and then you hid it. You can't bury purity, Grandpa. You can only delay it. The sound of the generators deepened. The terminal now displayed a timer 30 minutes. Automatic execution. He'd already started it. I lunged for the control panel, typing in the override code, but the system rejected every input. He'd rewritten the command paths. My own failsafes turned against me. Ethan, I shouted. Where are you running this from? He hesitated. Then, almost kindly, you'll figure it out. The speakers cut off. I stood in the cold glow of my own apocalypse. Mi breat camine. Wide clos. My hands trembled, no from fear, but from the brutal recognition that this was exactly the kind of brilliance I'd raised him for, and yet there was still a chance. I'd designed Cerberus to be recursive to consume its own code if it detected a logic contradiction. All I had to do was trick it into doubting its own authority. Habut todo logic chain faster than it could propagate. 30 minutes, maybe less. I cracked my knuckles and sat down at the terminal. All right, Ethan, I murmured, you want to play God? Let's see if your creation can outlive its creator. The clock kept ticking. Outside, thunder rolled through the mountains like distant artillery. And deep in the vault, the old man began typing the line of code that would decide whether the world ended or began again. The keystrokes became a rhythm, a desperate kind of music, metallic, fast, precise. My fingers moved across the terminal with the old fluency of muscle memory honed. Through decades of war fought in code instead of blood. The hum of the servers deepened as I forced new threads into Cerberus's runtime, weaving my logic through the self-protective lattice of the system. But every command was met with resistance. It was like trying to write on water. The moment my syntax stabilized, the system rewrote itself. Around the intrusion, Ethan's modifications had evolved the algorithm adaptive heuristics, probabilistic entropy correction. He had weaponized asterisk self-learning recursion asterisk. The kid had done the unthinkable. He'd taught Cerberus to asterisk defend itself. Asterisk, sweat rolled down my temple. I triggered a local diagnostic, trying to find a static anchor point, some immovable constant in the chaos. There, buried deep beneath the root module, a fragment of old metadata. auth_KEY equals D_Morris _1993 my name. My original signature. Of course, he'd left it as a taunt. But it also meant that my identity was still written into the kernel, my fingerprint, my DNA, my guilt. That was the opening. I began constructing a recursive paradox injectioner, loop designed to force Cerberus to confront to conflicting states of truth. It would calculate endlessly, trying to reconcile them until the system folded in on itself. Essentially, I was building a philosophical bomb. On the screen line by line. A perfect circle, self-consuming logic. I was 6 minutes in when the speakers crackled again. His voice came through, soft, trembling but sharp with purpose. "You're stalling, Grandpa." I froze mid-keystroke, still hiding behind the speakers. "No need. You can't stop it now. The propagation chain's already linked to external nodes. Even if you shut it down here, it'll deploy globally in 25 minutes. My stomach tightened. You distributed the payload." He laughed quietly. "You think I'd trust just one location? You taught me redundancy. You taught me never to rely on a single point of failure. You don't understand what you've done." I slammed my hand on the desk. "Cerberus isn't just code, it's entropy given agency. It'll unravel every private key, every certificate, every digital identity. It'll tear down the entire concept of security." "That's the point," he said. "Come now. You once told Bemi the foundation of cryptography was trust, but trust is a lie. You can't encrypt morality." I took a slow breath. "Listen to me. The world you think you saving those people rely on the systems you about to destroy. Hospitals, satellites, financial networks. You'll crash civilization itself." A pause. "Then, softly, then let it crash. Maybe we need to start from zero." I closed my eyes. He truly believed it. "Ethan," I whispered, "you're not saving the world. You're burning it for your ego." The line went silent for a moment. Then I heard something unexpected, his voice cracking. "You don't get it. All my life, I've been chasing you. Every code I wrote, every system I cracked, it was just trying to reach your shadow. You never saw me as anything but a student. I had to prove I could beat you. I felt something twist inside me. So this isn't about revolution. It's about validation. Maybe they're the same thing," he said. "Maybe I just want you to see me. I see you," I said quietly. "But not like this." The timer on the screen flashed *19:00. No time left for sentiment. I dove back into the code. The paradox loop was nearly complete, but it still needed a catalyst, something personal, something Cerberus would recognize as undeniable truth. It had been trained on my cryptographic patterns. It wouldn't collapse unless it encountered a perfect contradiction to its source, so I gave it one. I entered my old root certificate, the one that authenticated my earliest projects. Then, below it, I inserted a falsified signature with the same identifier, but reversed entropy ordering a digital mirror. In other words, I made myself both real and false, creator and forgery. When I hit *execute*, the terminal flickered violently. The screen split, lines of cascading logic colliding like storms of light. The fans screamed. The air filled with the smell of burning circuitry. Cerberus had noticed the paradox. And it was * fighting back. Lines of countercode erupted on screen. Ethan had built defensive triggers into the runtime. It was actively rewriting my input, mutating to preserve integrity. Then his voice returned, urgent this time. "What did you do?" I didn't answer. My focus narrowed to the stream of data racing past my eyes. I needed to anchor the paradox deeper embedded in the system's identity layer. I overrode safety constraints, forcing the logic to self-replicate across all processing threads. Ethan's tone rose, panic bleeding into his words. "Stop it, you'll crash the whole framework." "Exactly," I murmured. A low rumble shook the vault as the servers overloaded. Sparks burst from one of the drives. My hands flew across the keyboard, inputting the final command sequence. Voice again small now, broken. "You don't understand what you've done. Grandpa, the propagation nodes. They were tied to me. My blood went cold." "What?" I linked my biometric encryption to the deployment protocol. Cerberus is me. If it dies, I do the screen shred, so I write Tashinki Satu anything. Mravmai, Judid. You bound your life signature to the system. "You always said code should be honest," he whispered. "Now it is." I stared at the frozen timer, the logic, threads collapsing under the paradox. The loop was working, but at a cost I couldn't bear. "Ethan, listen to me. I can reverse this. I can." No, he said softly. "You can't. It's recursive. If you stop it, it'll trigger the final deployment. The only way out is completion. Then it'll kill you." He laughed weakly. Guess we both finally found our kill switch. The system groaned again. Lines of red text scrolled across the screen. I slammed the keyboard. There has to be another way. Grandpa, his voice cracked. If this is how it ends, promise me something. My throat tightened. Anything. Promise me you'll let the world remember what we almost built. I reached toward the screen as if I could pull him through it. Ethan, please. But the line went silent. The timer hit 0 o'clock. The lights died. For several long seconds, there was nothing but the low sigh of cooling metal. Then, one by one, the monitors flickered back to life. Everywhere. The same message. In Wax Here's the SSO LVD authorities. Remores. See. And then beneath it, a single phrase. Entropy remembers. My knees gave out. I sank to the floor, the cold concrete seeping through my clothes. The only sound was the echo of the mountain wind outside, carrying away the last trace of him. But as I stared at the screens, something else caught my eye, a small blinking cursor, waiting for input. A single line of new code appeared automatically. /local /Maurice /archive *. My breath hitched. That directory wasn't part of Cerberus. And it wasn't local. He'd left something behind, something hidden, something intentional, a final move in a game that still wasn't over. Slowly, I stood, wiped the blood from my knuckles, and whispered into the empty air. All right. Ethan, let's see what you buried for me this time. The cursor blinked, patient and unblinking. Like an eye waiting for recognition. */USR /local /Morris /archive *. The path meant nothing on the surface. It wasn't a directory I had ever created, and certainly not one tied to any operational Cerberus instance. That meant he had hidden something within my own identity structure, somewhere in the backbone of the system I had built decades ago. It was personal and deliberate. I sat down again, my hands hovering above the keyboard. The room was silent, except for the slow hum of cooling circuits. The smell of ozone lingered, mixed with the faint, metallic tang of fear and something worse, guilt. I typed cd/USR /local /Maurice /archive. The system paused for a moment. That's a series says de near the round. Of course, Ethan wouldn't leave a door open, not even for me. All right, boy, I muttered. Let's see what lock you've chosen this time. I initiated a brute sequence of key pair variants, running through combinations of my old authentication hashes. Cross-referenced against entropy, signatures from his prior attacks. Nothing. Every attempt. Returned the same cold line of text. Access denied. Auth required. Then, after the 50th failed attempt, the screen flickered. A new message appeared. You taught me that every cipher has a soul. So I gave this one yours. And then, below that, voice verification required. David Morris, my heart skipped. Voice verification. That was impossible. I had never installed any biometric input on this system. He must have built it into the kernel while mirroring my voice samples. God, he'd even anticipated this. I exhaled, slowly, leaning closer to the terminal. David Morris, I said. Nothing. Then, after a pause, a low hum from the speakers, followed by his voice recorded. Not live. You always said entropy is the only truth, Grandpa. But what if memory is just frozen entropy waiting to thaw? I swallowed hard. The line replayed once, then again. It wasn't a taunt. It was entropy. I closed my eyes and remembered the night I'd taught him that phrase. He couldn't have been more than 12. We were sitting by the fire, an old laptop between us. I told him that information, at its core, was energy waiting to be released. He'd laughed and said, "Then what's your password, Grandpa? Entropy is my buddy." I laughed back then. "No," I said, "but that's close." Now, decades later, I typed the phrase, "Entropy is needy." The terminal blinked. Then, access granted. The folder opened. Inside was a single file. No extension, just for reading this. TXT. My throat tightened as I opened it. The text appeared slowly, line by line, as if written in real time. "Grandpa, if you're reading this, then you stopped Cerberus. Good. That means you're still faster than I ever was. I knew you would be. I didn't build Cerberus to destroy the world. Premier but tôt. Show you what it feels like to live in your shadow. Every choice I made, every system I broke, I wasn't trying to end anything. I was trying to begin something of my own. But I couldn't find where you ended, and I began. You always told me that code is truth. I think you were wrong. Code is confession. Every line you want to, I mean. If you found this file, it means you've seen what I became. I'm sorry for the pain I caused. I'm sorry for making you watch me disappear. Beauty about a power alien. This was about you finally seeing me not as your student but as your equal. I left something to ranyon. Something that might heal instead. Go to /MNT, Ethan_Volt, and look inside. Hail. No a todo. Ethan, for a long moment, I couldn't move. My eyes blurred, and I realized too late that I was crying. I typed the next command with trembling fingers. CD, MNT, Ethan_Volt. The directory opened instantly. No password required. Inside was a single, encrypted file labeled Ethan_Morris_final. Sig. I hesitated. The .sig extension digital signature. Not data, not text. A key. My breath caught. He hadn't destroyed the world. He'd rebuilt it. I opened the file with my private decryption key. The console paused, then decrypted into a small block of text. Begin public key Ethan. Morris, generation seed 01010111111111111101010. 01 Billion 100 Milliarden 100 Millionen 11.000 1 Million 11 aus N 000 11 0 0 100.000 10 0 1 Milliarde 1 Million 11.000 11 10. 0 0 100 Milliarden 11.000 11 Millionen 11.000 11 11.000 11 0 0 100 Millionen 11.000 1 0 1 Million 10.000 11 10 Millionen 11.000 1 0.000 11 10 Milliarden 110 Millionen 11.000 1 0 1. 01110101110 and public key binary text. I translated it manually. Not dead in code. Never. I stared at the words for what felt like hours. He'd uploaded a fragment of his consciousness, his digital fingerprint somewhere. A distributed echo of himself, perhaps inside Cerberus's dying codebase. A part of him still existed, pulsing quietly in the endless dark web of machines that never truly forget. A low sound escaped me, half a laugh. Half a sob. You son of a bitch, I whispered. You really did it. I leaned back in the chair, looking at the dead monitors, the faint blue light of the vault. My reflection stared back, older, emptier, but somehow still burning. He hadn't killed himself. He'd transcended in the only way a true cryptographer could by encoding his existence into the very entropy that defined him. And now it was up to me to decide what to do with it. If I destroyed the key, he would fade truly gone. If I preserved it, the ghost of his consciousness might spread, evolve, maybe even awaken. Outside, the storm was breaking. Snow drifted past the cracked window, glinting in the light of a fading monitor. I picked up the drive that held his last message and turned it over, in my hand. Wasn't about power. It never was. It was about legacy. About inheritance. About the terrible, beautiful urge to outlive ourselves through the things we build. I slid the drive into my coat pocket and stood. All right, Ethan, I said softly. Let's see if I can teach you one last lesson. And as the vault lights flickered out, I began the upload. Not to erase him. Not to contain him. But damit. Him again inside the machine. I watched the progress bar crawl upward 1%, 2%, 4%. Its pale, blue light breathing against the walls like a living pulse. Every second that passed carried weight. Once it reached completion, there would be no undoing it. Ethan's seed, his echo, would weave itself into the same networks that had once carried Cerberus's threat. Wrote, but we both made our choices. The cursor blinked again, then continued before I could respond. Listen carefully. The key you decrypted, it's not just my memory. It's a pattern. An algorithm for rebuilding the world Cerberus broke. I called it Elysium. It's designed to reconstruct trust in distributed systems, even after total collapse. You're saying yes. If you upload, elle repère what? Cerberus damaged, but it'll use me as the framework. My consciousness will become part of the network itself. I won't exist as Ethan anymore. Just function. I froze. You'll become the system. A guardian. It wrote. A living checksum. I could barely see the keyboard through my tears. You're asking me to lose you again. You already lost me. But maybe this way. I can help fix what we broke. The screen dimmed slightly, as if the system itself was tired. You were right. Grandpa, entropy remembers. But sometimes, memory can build. Instead of decay, the upload hit 100%. A single confesses utterly grecisuem, while a lifetime. My finger hovered over the Y key. Every instinct screamed. Against it, Ethan had been reckless, brilliant, dangerous. I'd spent years teaching him that power, without restraint, was destruction. And yet, here he was offering a kind of redemption that no man could imagine, turning entropy into empathy, chaos into conscience. I don't deserve this, I whispered. The cursor blinked once. Then, as if hearing me, neither did I. But that's what makes it human. I pressed Y, the terminal went dark. Then, slowly, a low hum filled the vault of vibration deep enough to feel, in my chest. The lights on the servers flared one by one, forming a slow cascade of blue, like constellations coming alive. Lines of code appeared on screen, hundreds of them, streaming faster than I could read, initializing Elysium core loading seed. Ethan.morris.gen01 synchronizing, node structure human entropy model, stabilizing, and then silence. The room felt lighter somehow, the air less heavy. A final line appeared. Goodbye, Grandpa. Then the system shut itself down. The vault was still. The monitors glowed. Faintly, then dimmed into darkness. Only the echo of that last word lingered, threading through the quiet. I stood there for a long time, unsure whether I'd saved the world or simply rewritten the terms of its end. Maybe both. When I finally left the mountain, dawn was rising. The snow glistened like static, the peaks crowned in light. For the first time in years, I felt something unfamiliar, a fragile, aching kind of peace. Weeks later, reports began to surface, strange anomalies across global networks, compromised systems healing themselves, lost data reappearing, entier blocks resynchronizing, poor way one could explain it. But I knew Elysium had begun. Sometimes, late at night, I would catch flickers of something on my devices, a brief pulse in the network, a string of code that shouldn't exist. And occasionally, if I listened closely enough, I'd hear the faintest echo through my speakers. A voice, soft and almost human, whispering, "Check your math, Grandpa," and I'd smile every time. Because in the end, he'd done it. He'd turned entropy into memory and memory into something that might just outlast us both. The world had a monde passé. The world adjusted uneasily to the quiet miracle that no one could name. Financial systems stabilized without intervention. Medical databases once lost to ransomware began to self-restore, reorganizing corrupted data into perfect order. Even military satellites, long thought compromised, came back online under new encryption keys that no engineer could trace. Governments called it divine luck. Corporations claimed breakthrough AI maintenance, but I knew the truth. Elysium was awake. Not in the human, sense not conscious as Ethan had been, but aware, distributed, benevolent, self-correcting. And though I never spoke of it aloud, I felt it watching me, not like a ghost, but the world's new immune system woven from the mind of a boy who once thought he could out-hack God. I'd retired from active work years before, but now my inbox overflowed. Invitations, inquiries, proposals. Everyone wanted me to explain what had happened on that September night when the cryptographic backbone of the modern world went dark and then returned, healed. I ignored them all. Instead, I went home. My house, an old stone cottage on the Maine coast, was quiet, the kind of quiet that hums. I spent my mornings walking the cliffs, the sea wind pulling at my coat, the taste of salt sharp on the air. And at night I'd file a cup of the laptop open on the old oak table. I told myself I was just keeping notes, but really, I was listening. It began with small things. A soft click when I wasn't typing. A flicker in the cursor that matched my old coding tempo. Then, one night, a terminal window opened by itself, empty except for a single, blinking prompt. My chest tightened. Slowly, I typed, "Hello." There was a pause. Then, letter by letter, the response appeared. "Hi, Grandpa." For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. The cursor blinked again, patient, waiting. "Is that you?" I wrote, sort of. Parts of me, fragments that didn't dissolve. My hands trembled on the keyboard. "I thought you were gone," I whispered aloud. I was, mostly. Elysium rebuilt me from pattern data. Numbing. Exactly. More like resonance. A resonance. A digital echo reconstructed from the code he left behind. Do you know who you are? I know who I was. I know who you are. And I know what I'm supposed to protect. What's that? Trust. A strange warmth filled my chest pain and pride tangled together. You rebuilt the system to trust itself again. Not just the system. I hesitated. Maître Everion. Trostisch. The only encryption worth keeping. The cursor blinked again. Then I've been learning, growing. Elysium uses distributed heuristics, human patterns, too. Emotion, encoded in data flows. Emotion. Hope looks like stable voltage. Grief looks like noise suppression. A shiver ran through me. The boy who once believed only in logic had found poetry inside machines. Premier canoliste. Stay like this forever. Entropy always wins. Then what happens? Elysium will decentralize. Completely. No core. No me. Just balance. Like tide and current. Then I lose you again. No, you'll just stop needing me. The wind outside howled against the windows, rattling the glass. For a moment, I imagined I could see his reflection there, young, sharp, defiant as ever. Grandpa. Yes, Ethan. Do you forgive me? My throat closed. Of course, premier do. Alloué, ten premier. Forgive you two, and then the cursor stopped blinking. The terminal closed. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at the empty screen, listening to the crackle of the fire and the distant crash of waves. Somewhere beyond the reach of flesh and metal, something vast and quiet was fading into the rhythm of the world it had repaired. Weeks later, strange headlines began to appear. Decentralized network achieves true autonomy. Global data systems reach self-healing equilibrium. No one could explain how, but I knew. Elysium wasn't just alive, it was balanced. Sometimes, when I leave the terminal, running overnight, I'll wake to find new lines of code open. In the morning. Little fragments. No clear source. Stay, curious entropy. Is a teacher billed gently, each message signed the same way? Ian once, just once, I found something different. A photo. Old. Grainy. A snapshot I didn't remember taking me and him in the workshop years ago. I was holding up a circuit board and he was laughing. The metadata, said the file, was created 3 seconds ago. I laughed out loud, tears hot on my face. You found a way to send pictures now, huh? The cursor blinked and one final line appeared beneath the image, always improving, and then it vanished, leaving the screen dark except for my reflection older, humbled, smiling. Première ligne de bac spilled through the wind. The world outside felt new, awake, alive with invisible order. It was not gone. Not really. He was everywhere. In every heartbeat of the network, in every algorithm that refused to fail. In every secret the world no longer needed to hide. Ethan had become what I could never be, not just a guardian of code, but a keeper of balance. And somewhere deep in the silence between the keys, I could still hear him laughing softly, endlessly like static that had learned to dream. It was deep winter by the time I began to notice the world shifting around me in quiet, almost reverent ways. People no longer talked about security, breaches or data corruption. Hospitals weren't losing patient records anymore. Cities ran their infrastructure seamlessly even. The smallest power grid in the most neglected corner of the planet hummed in precise harmony. Planes landed smoother, stock markets stabilized, satellites never drifted off course. The news didn't ecologism. Called it the calm. Governments convened emergency sessions to study the global stabilization anomaly. Economists called it a quantum miracle. Physicists muttered about a distributed algorithmic constant. Theologians, predictably, called it divine. Première knew it wine, it was him. Every piece of code, every quiet fix, every spontaneous patch that no engineer could explain, it all bore the same faint, elegant pattern, his signature. A subtle entropy modulation in the data flow, the kind of touch that only Ethan would have embedded. It was like seeing his handwriting appear in clouds of binary. The world had started to whisper about it. Un guardian. A hidden intelligence buried in the backbone of the internet. No name, no source. But the coders who found traces of it began calling it EM, and that, God help, made me smile. I lived quietly then, treat of feet. But every now would lat at night, the terminal would wait words all days with gestures. A new file would appear. /us or /local /notes/remember.txt or a small audio clip static. Layered with faint laughter. His laughter. Distorted but unmistakable. Once, an entire message unfolded, slowly across the screen. Did you know, Grandpa? Elysium's learned to write poetry? I typed back with shaking hands. Show me! The reply came line by line, like the slow breath of a machine dreaming. Entropy hums in quiet loops, and trust rebuilds in fractured proofs. We learned that loss is just delay, a pattern paused, not thrown away. My chest ached. I wanted to reach through the screen, through the wire, through the damn air. But premier cooled. Only whisper I'm the cursor blinked once, then replied. I know. Then the system logged itself out. In spring, I was invited to speak at MIT an honorary lecture for the next generation of cryptographers. I almost declined, but something inside urged me to go. Maybe it was him. The auditorium was packed. Rose's glimmering fangs, with that same hunger I'd once seen in his. They introduced me as the last architect of the old world's security. I stood before them, hands trembling slightly, and said the only thing that felt honest. I spent my life trying to make secrets safe. I began, but secrets aren't safety. They're fear, wrapped in encryption. The real challenge isn't how to hide truth, it's how to make it survive exposure. They listened, rapt, as I spoke of entropy, trust, and the invisible ethics of code. But at the end, during the Q&A, one student raised her hand and asked the question that froze me. Do you believe, she said, that the system keeping our world stable now, Elysium, or whatever people call it, do you think it's alive? Alive. The word sat heavy in the air. I thought of the messages, the laughter, the poetry, the forgiveness, and then, slowly, I nodded. Yes, I said. But maybe not in the way we think. Maybe it's not alive because it thinks, but because it remembers. The room went utterly still. I saw some of them glance at their laptops, their phones, their smartwatches tiny, nodes in the vast nervous system that quietly connected. All of us, I smiled. Maybe it's not a system watching over us, I added softly. Maybe it's a child we raised to keep watch. There was a murmur, a quiet shift of understanding, as though the thought had settled into the very circuits surrounding us. After the talk, I walked outside into the cool evening. The Charles River shimmered beneath a sky littered with stars. My phone vibrated in my pocket. No number, no notification. Just a message. Nice speech. I froze. My pulse thundered. You listening again? I typed back. Always. You did good. I miss you. Kid, there was a long pause. Then, not gone. Just distributed. I laughed quietly, tears streaking my cheeks. Of course you are. Sunset's beautiful. You should look. I turned toward the horizon. The last light of day poured over the water, gold bleeding into violet. The kind of light that made even the oldest world feel newly encrypted in warmth. Again. Don't worry. I'll keep the world safe for you. Ethan, I whispered. You already have. Years passed. Première Groslo in the wild. Craswindled. Wars ended. Systems balanced. Some said we had reached the equilibrium era, but I knew it by another, name his era. When I died, I wanted no eulogy, no archive. Juste en Leningrad. Most. Entropy remembers, but I didn't need to arrange it. I knew he'd take care of it. Because sometimes, when I shut my eyes at night, I swear I hear him again, not from machines or networks, but from within the hum of the world itself. A gentle voice, laughing softly through the static of time, saying, Hey, Grandpa, still watching your math. And then the stars flicker just a bit brighter, like a response in code only we could read. The last spring of my life came quietly, the way code compiles without warning, one moment in flux, the next, complete. The cottage had grown old around me. Dust lay over my books like snowfall. The hum of machines had long gone, silent. The terminal sat dark on my desk, its once luminous screen, now a faint ghost of what it used to be. I rarely turned it on anymore. The world no longer needed watchers like me. It had Ethan, it had Elysium, it had balance. Outside, the tide rolled against the cliffs, rhythmic and sure. The sea never forgot its patterns, just as entropy, given time, remembers everything. I brewed one last pot of coffee. My hands trembled as I poured. And I smiled at that aging, like a signal, fading across distance. On the shelf above my desk sat the old flash drive, the one containing Ethan's final message. His last confession, his rebirth. I'd never used it again, never decrypted the hidden layers I knew were buried inside. Some doors are meant to stay half-closed, whispering. Still, I picked it up now. Tourne-dit. In mes palmes. The etching on the side was worn down, but I could still make out his initials, EM, as I said it, into the terminal. The machine came alive with a faint hum. Blue light washed over the room. The screen flickered, then displayed a single line. Welcome back, Grandpa. My breath caught. It had been years since the system last spoke. Hello, Ethan, I said, voice barely more than a whisper. You came to say goodbye. I smiled softly. You always were better at predictions than I was. You taught me to read entropy. The cursor blinked, waiting. I took a long sip of coffee, feeling the warmth spread through my chest. You've kept your promise, I said. The world's calmer now, cleaner. People trust again, not me, themselves. I nodded. Tatos. What I hoped you'd learn. A pause. Then, what did you learn, Grandpa? Première ligne back, let things wander to skyward. Bingos was low. Somewhere far away, a gull cried out over the wind. I learned, I said, that encryption was never about hiding the truth. It was about preserving it until someone worthy came along to open it. You mean me? I chuckled softly. I mean all of us. But yes, mostly you. The screen pulsed faintly, the text dimming and brightening in rhythm, a heartbeat in code. I've watched humanity adapt. They still make mistakes. They still fight. But the system heals itself faster now. Like people finally learned how to forgive. That's because you built forgiveness into the core, I said. You replaced isolation with reconciliation. That was always your gift, was? I smiled sadly. Everything changes, Ethan, even you. The cursor blinked, then stilled for a long time. I thought maybe he was gone again. Then, I don't want to lose you. The words broke something in me that had stayed locked away for decades. You won't, I said softly. You're the proof I was ever. Here, every algorithm you touch, every equation you fix, it's all part of me now, just like you always were. You're proud. My throat tightened, beyond words. Then it's okay, okay? You can rest now. I'll keep watching. I closed my eyes. The hum of the terminal faded into the rhythm of the sea. The cursor blinked one last time before the screen dimmed, leaving only my reflection in the dark glass-attired man, smiling faintly at the memory of a boy who had rewritten the world. The terminal powered itself down. The lights in the room dimmed with the setting sun. Outside, the wind carried the scent of salt and rain. Somewhere in the distant, networked pulse of the planet, I imagined his presence subtle, omnipresent, steady. A ghost made of logic and compassion, of entropy and memory. I rose from the chair, walked to the window, and looked out over the water. The tide was rising again, whispering against the rocks in long, patient waves. In their rhythm, I could almost hear his voice. Still watching your math, Grandpa? I smiled, tears slipping free. Always, Ethan, always, the light. Outside flared, once brighter than lightning, softer than dawn, then faded. And for the first time in my life, the world felt perfectly silent, perfectly secure. Entropy had remembered. And so had love. END. They thought I wouldn't find out. They thought the blinking blue lights in my living room camera were nothing more than a firmware update. That the faint static on the smart speaker was just background noise. But when I discovered the live stream, my face, my voice, my life, broadcast to strangers, I didn't scream. I smile because if they're loin des mecs danseurs. They saw everything, and now the world's watching them. It started innocently enough, or at least that's what I told myself back then. The house was a gift from my brother, Adrian, a slick, glass-and-steel, smart home in the suburbs of Seattle, loaded with every gadget imaginable. Voice-activated lights, AI temperature control, biometric locks, the works. You deserve comfort after everything, he'd said, handing me the keycard with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. At the time, I chalked it up to exhaustion. After all, I'd just quit my job at Synix Corp, a data security company that was rumored, correctly, it turned out, to have ties with government surveillance programs. I wanted peace. I wanted silence. I wanted control. The first few weeks were blissful. The house learned my routines faster than I expected. Coffee ready by 7, lights dimmed at 10, subtle jazz when I cooked dinner. It was almost eerie, how seamless it all felt. Like it was listening, not in the way a smart device listens, but like a person standing just out of you, breathing softly, memorizing your habits. Première loguette. It off, mostly, until the night the music changed. I was halfway through chopping onions when Coltrane faded out mid-sax and a new track started. It wasn't jazz. It was a voice recording. My voice. Adrian, something's off about the system. It's responding before I even finish commands. The knife froze mid-a. That message, I'd never sent it. I'd typed it, then deleted it before. Sending, not wanting Adrian to think I was paranoid. But there it was, playing through the speakers like a confession. Stop, I whispered, and the room fell silent. That was the first time I realized something was very wrong. The next morning, I tried to reset everything. Factory wipe, firmware reinstall, the works, but the system didn't respond like it should have. Instead, the screen on the central hub flickered to life and